Hey, night owls. Thank you for joining me on another slow journey through history. I'm truly grateful you've chosen this cozy corner of YouTube to unwind. Your support means so much. If you enjoy these nighttime journeys, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. Feel free to drop a comment, letting me know where you're listening from. I love hearing from you. Tonight, I invite you to settle in as we gently explore a curious topic. What junk food was like in the Wild West, and other tasty tidbits from frontier life in the mid-1800s. No need to worry about anything now. Just listen, relax, and let's travel back in time together. Go ahead and dim the lights. Maybe switch on a fan or let a cool breeze in. Get yourself comfortable. Snuggle under the blankets. Close your eyes if you like. Picture a warm campfire glow or an old lantern flicker on a wooden table. Tonight, we journey back to the American frontier around the 1850s. Stretching across the Wild West, we'll explore how cowboys, pioneers, and townsfolk satisfied their snack cravings and sweet tooth back then. Don't worry. You are safe and cozy here in the present, just listening. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. As you listen, notice how the wide open plains and dusty main streets of old frontier towns come alive in your mind. The pace was slower, the nights darker, and yet, even then, people loved a good treat. Let's discover those simple indulgences of a bygone era. Life on the frontier was harsh, but even pioneer families and cowhands had a sweet tooth. Sugar was precious and sometimes scarce. Yet, by the mid-1800s, the United States already boasted over 400 candy factories, mostly churning out long-lasting hard candies like peppermint sticks. Think of rows of red and white candy sticks and molasses, toffees, in a general store's jars. Simple sweets that brought delight after a long day. In frontier trading posts and town general stores, children could spend a precious penny on licorice whips or peppermint sticks. No colourful gummy bears or chocolate bars yet. Those would come later. But a strip of licorice or a sugar stick was enough to lighten up a child's eyes. You might be surprised to hear that chocolate was around too, though not as common out west. By the 1850s, brands like Whitman's were selling boxed chocolates back east. But on the frontier, a piece of chocolate was a rare luxury. More often, treats were homemade or simple. Molasses, candies, rock candy crystals, or fruit preserves. During holidays, families worked wonders with what they had. Homemade fudge, gingerbread cookies, fruitcake, and breads graced many a prairie Christmas table. An orange or a handful of raisins would be a treasured Christmas gift for a child who hadn't tasted fresh fruit in months. Sweet indulgences were cherished, savoured slowly around the hearth. One frontier memoir recalls strings of candy and raisins on a Christmas tree, little eyes sparkling at the sight. Even in rough times, people found comfort in something sweet, a reminder that some joys are timeless. Of course, without modern dentistry, too many sweets might leave you with a toothache, a risk some were willing to take with a wry smile. As you imagine a pioneer family sharing a candy stick by lamplight, notice how even the simplest treat carried a bit of hope. And so, with the taste of peppermint and molasses on your tongues, we drift further into the past. Next, we'll sidle up to the chuckwagon and see what's cooking out on the range. Mess time at a cowboy camp. Belle Fourche, South Dakota, 1887. A group of cowboys gathers around the chuckwagon for a hot meal on the open range. By first light on the prairie, a cowboy's coffee pot was already on the fire, black and strong enough to float a horseshoe, as they like to joke. Out on cattle drives, meals had to be simple, hearty and portable. Beans, bacon, hardtack biscuits, dried fruit and coffee were staples of the trail. Imagine dawn breaking as a trail cook, they called him Cookie, stirs a cast-iron pot of beans over the campfire. The rich aroma of coffee mingles with wood smoke. Cowboys might work 12-hour days in the saddle, so every bite had to count. A frontier saying claimed cowboy coffee was so strong it could make a rattlesnake surrender. A grim little joke to start the morning. Breakfast might be day-old sourdough bread fried in bacon grease, washed down with that scalding coffee. As one old cowhand summed up their diet, beef, beans and tatters. That's what you had to have. Starch and protein to fuel the long ride. It wasn't fancy, but it kept you in the saddle. On the open range, fresh food was a luxury. Cowboys often subsisted on salt pork and tough trail biscuits, so hard they could knock a cowboy's teeth out, if not softened in gravy. When they did have fresh beef, it was often the less tender cuts. They joked that the Texas Longhorn steer was 8 pounds of hamburger on 800 pounds of bone and horn. A humorous way to say those cattle were scrawny except for their enormous horns. Still, a good chuckwagon cook knew creative tricks. He might simmer a stew all day from whatever meat was on hand. Maybe wild rabbit or buffalo if they were lucky. If the crew was really lucky and had a day of rest, Cookie might even whip up a dessert. Cowboys with a sweet tooth rejoice. Some trail cooks made spotted pup, a kind of thick rice pudding dotted with dried raisins and sweetened with molasses. They'd boil it until a spoon could stand up straight in the pot, sticking up like a puppy's tail. Just the image of that must have made trail-weary men grin. More often, dessert was simpler. Maybe sourdough biscuits drizzled with molasses as a treat. On special occasions, a vinegar pie might appear. Yes, vinegar. Lacking lemons on the prairie, pioneer cooks used a bit of vinegar, sugar, and spices to create a makeshift lemon pie that was surprisingly tasty. These small comforts broke up the monotony of endless beef and beans. As evening falls on our imaginary camp, you can almost hear the clang of the cook's triangle bell calling the cowboys in. They hunker around the chuckwagon, tin plates in hand, trading light banter as they wolf down stew and biscuits. Out here under the huge western sky, even a plain meal felt satisfying. Perhaps a cowhand pulls a harmonica from his pocket after supper, playing a slow tune as others sip the last of the coffee. It's a simple, rough life. But those little moments of pleasure, a sweet molasses biscuit or a hot cup of joe, made it bearable. And if the cook was in good spirits, maybe he'd slip the boys a little something extra to lift morale. Coffee so strong it could wake the dead, or a joke about the mystery meat in the stew. In the quiet crackle of the fire, the prairie night settles. But our journey isn't done. Next, we'll wander into town, where brighter lights and bolder flavors await, including the promise of a free lunch that might not be as free as it sounds. When weary cowboys or dusty miners rode into a boom town, one place drew them like moths to a flame: the saloon. Saloons weren't just for whiskey. Many offered a glorious thing known as the free lunch. Buy a drink, often a 5-cent beer, and you could help yourself to an all-you-can-eat spread of salty, hearty foods meant to keep you drinking. Picture a long wooden bar in Deadwood or Tombstone, 1870s. On the counter sit platters of bread, cheese, pickles, and cold meats. Perhaps a pot of beans or stew, even fried fish if the owner was enterprising. A sign might read, "Free lunch," in bold letters. Hungry prospectors piled their plates high with ham, sausages, potatoes, and beans. A feast for the price of a single beer. Of course, the saloon keeper knew these salty eats would get patrons thirsty for more beer. So in the end, the house always came out ahead. Still, for a drifter living on hardtack for weeks, that free lunch felt like heaven on earth. These western saloons could be surprisingly cosmopolitan. As railroads expanded, even oysters and exotic foods made their way to frontier tables. In San Francisco's Barbary Coast, or the rail hub of San Antonio, a bar might advertise fresh oyster stew or pickled herring. Delicacies shipped on ice in the new refrigerated rail cars. One legendary San Francisco saloon lunch offered fried ocean fish, Italian spaghetti, and crusty bread alongside the beer, all for a nickel. Imagine the rough-and-tumble gold miners twirling spaghetti on their forks in 1870s California, laughing in disbelief at such fancy fare so far from home. It must have felt like a bizarre dream, a taste of Europe in a rowdy Western saloon. Meanwhile, jars of pickled eggs and pickled pig's feet sat on many a bar top. Quick protein that patrons speared with pocket knives between gulps of whiskey. The eggs were an import from German-American taverns back east, and caught on out west as an ideal pub snack. Tasty with ale and cheap to provide. Hard-boiled eggs soaked in vinegar brine, kept practically forever, and their sharp tang nicely chased a shot of bourbon. So yes, our forebears had bar snacks too. Just a bit different from modern peanuts or pretzels. Not every frontier meal was so satisfying, though. Travellers learned to be wary of certain deals. There's a darkly amusing story of railroad dining scams in the Old West. Train passengers would prepay for a hot meal at the next station stop. Clever local vendors would serve the food piping hot, too hot to eat quickly, and then, with conductors bribed to help, suddenly ring the bell or whistle for departure. Panicked passengers had to leap back on the train after only a few scolding bites. The tricksters then scraped the barely touched plates back into the pot and resold the same meal to the next train's customers. Sinister, yes, but one can't help but admire their sneakiness. Historians still argue whether these tales are slightly exaggerated, but they agree such scams did occur and that food along the rails was notoriously bad. In any case, it makes a modern fast food upsell seem positively innocent by comparison. As you sip your imaginary sarsaparilla and nibble a phantom pickled egg, consider that even in the Wild West, there was no truly free lunch. Our journey now takes one more turn, beyond the saloon doors and dusty trails. We'll peek at the diverse cultural flavors that spiced up Western junk food, and a few odd frontier cravings that might raise your eyebrows. The American West was a crossroads of cultures, and with that came new flavors and fixes. Take chili con carne, for example. That hearty stew of beef, chili peppers and beans, its origins are a bit mysterious. Historians still argue whether chili was first concocted by Spanish Mexicans in Texas, Canary Islands immigrants in San Antonio, or trail cooks on cattle drives. But they all agree on one thing. Chili became a favorite of cowboys and pioneers on the frontier. A bubbling pot of chili could make a camp feel a little more like home. By the 1880s, the chili queens of San Antonio were selling bowls of the spicy stew in the public plazas at night, and air rich with cumin and chili powder. For a hungry traveller, that cheap, hot bowl was the ultimate comfort food. The Wild West's version of fast food, long before anyone dreamed of drive-thrus. Mexican, Native American, and other local cuisines deeply influenced Western fare. Miners and ranchers in California and the Southwest often enjoyed tamales sold by street vendors, steaming corn masa dumplings filled with spiced meat, wrapped in corn husks for easy eating. The tamale carts were the original food trucks in cities like San Francisco, as common as taco trucks are today. Folks would grab a couple of savory tamales from a vendor's wagon for a quick lunch on the boardwalk, adding a dash of salsa if they had it. In New Mexico territory, green chili sauces and piñon nuts found their way into settler cooking. Fry bread, a simple fried dough, originated with Native American communities and became a beloved treat topped with honey or sugar, essentially an early donut of the West. Every culture contributed a little something. From the Chinese railroad workers came dishes like stir-fried noodles and teas. After toiling all day laying tracks, Chinese cooks would boil jasmine tea and stir up rice with bits of vegetables. The American crews initially stuck to their beef and beans, but eventually some grew curious and tasted these new dishes. In time, chop suey and chow mein parlours popped up in frontier towns, introducing a whole new palette of flavours. A cowboy might still crave his coffee and bacon, but on a rare trip to Chinatown, he would delight in sweet and sour pork or a crispy egg roll, though he might not know exactly what he was eating. Not all frontier junk foods were wholesome, however. The 19th century had its share of questionable pick-me-ups. Consider the curious case of Coca-Bola chewing gum, an invention by a Dr. Mitchell, who laced gum with a then legal stimulant, cocaine. Yes, cocaine-laced gum was sold in general stores as an energy booster for tired travellers. In an era before drug regulations, this was seen as a novel tonic. Each stick of Coca-Bola gum was said to contain the jolt of 10 lines of the potent ingredient. A cowboy would chew this and feel downright invincible, at least until it wore off. Likewise, some patent medicines promised vigour in a bottle, often full of sugar, alcohol, or opium. A cola drink introduced in the 1880s famously contained coca leaf extract. Hint: it evolved into a soda we know very well today. Let's just say the Wild West truly earned the wild when it came to these stimulants. In contrast, many frontier people stuck to natural energizers. Strong tobacco to chew, or a swig of bitter yerba mate tea if they could get it. When coffee beans ran out, as they often did in remote areas, resourceful pioneers roasted dandelion roots or barley to make a hot coffee-like brew. It wasn't real coffee, but after weeks on nothing but water, even a makeshift brew lifted spirits. As night deepens on the frontier, imagine the last glow of a saloon window fading and the quiet of a prairie homestead settling in. A family might finish off the day with a small treat, perhaps a bit of honey on cornbread or a cup of chicory coffee. A lone cowboy on the range might chew the end of a sarsaparilla root, enjoying its sweet root beer taste as he gazes at the stars. Every flavor, every little junk food of the Wild West tells a story of ingenuity and finding joy in hard circumstances. Now our historical wanderings are coming to a close. All that talk of food has hopefully left you satisfied, not hungry. Let's gently wind down and drift off with a few final thoughts. As we leave behind the old saloons, chuckwagons, and candy counters, take a slow breath in and out. We've seen that even in the rough and rugged Old West, people savoured small pleasures. A peppermint stick, a plate of beans, a daring new flavour from a faraway land. In many ways, their simple comfort foods connected them to home and happiness, just as our favourite midnight snacks do for us today. The details change. Hardtack and jerky versus potato chips and soda. But the feeling is the same. Humans have always loved a treat at day's end. Think of those pioneer children carefully unwrapping a piece of horehound candy. Or that trail cook smiling as a hungry cowboy enjoys his first taste of spotted pup pudding. Such moments are like warm lantern light glimmering against the vast dark of history. They remind us that joy can be found in the most humble morsels, even when life is tough. Out on the silent prairie, the campfires are dying down. In a dimly lit farmhouse, a mother tucks her kids into bed, promising pancakes in the morning if the chickens laid enough eggs. The past and present start to blur. You're safe here, listening in the quiet dark, knowing that across time, people have ended their long days with a sigh and perhaps something sweet. Tonight, you carry these gentle stories with you into sleep. The Wild West junk foods we explored were more than just odd facts. They're little echoes of comfort, passed down through time. Let these echoes lull you now. There's no more need to stay awake. The history has been told, softly and fully. You can let your mind drift like smoke from a campfire, higher and higher into the starry night. Thank you for keeping me company on this peaceful journey. Rest now, knowing a bit more about the world of yesterday, but feeling cozy here in the present. Sweet dreams.